Well, you thought I was done with classic albums? I thought so as well. But yeah, I guess I just enjoyed talking about albums that I was very intimately familiar with. That I want to continue doing it. I mean, it's a lot less work in terms of preparation, and I know you guys really enjoy it, and I love it too. So I figure as long as I can keep it up, every Thursday will be another classic album. Surprise! So yeah, we'll see how long I can keep it up. But yeah, I wanted to start with one of my absolute favorite albums of all time. So let's dive into it. Islands by King Crimson. So, King Crimson, I don't think needs an introduction at this point. I mean, they are the grandfathers of the whole subgenre. In some respects, they kind of kickstarted the whole thing. Getting their start in the late 60s, taking the world by storm with their debut album of In the Court of the Crimson King, really incorporating and blending classical, jazz, heavy metal, and a whole bunch of new styles of music and conglomerating it into one singular expression. And for the first handful of albums, starting with In the Court of the Crimson King, being followed up the next year with In the Wake of Poseidon, a lot of people thought that it was kind of like the same expression kind of over and over again. And I mean, if they wanted to rewrite In the Court of the Crimson King over and over and over again, I don't think any of us would have complained. But they followed it up with their third album the same year in 1970 of Lizard, where they just took the whole thing and, made a 180 into this very minstrel, almost Renaissance fair style of music that was extremely different than In the Wake of Poseidon and In the Court of the Crimson King. So everybody was very interested to see what album number 4 would offer. And in 1971, they came out with Islands. And Islands was the only studio to feature the touring lineup of Robert Fripp, Mel Collins, Boz Burrell, and Ian Wallace. And it would be the last one with their kind of signature lyricist and kind of co-writer of Peter Sinfield. And I used to call him Peter Seinfeld because that's how my brain read it, but I have been told that it is Sinfield. I hope I got it right. Otherwise, the people that have been calling me an idiot for getting it wrong, they're the ones that were wrong. Anyway, the thing that I particularly love about this album is how unique it is in the confines of the King Crimson discography, as well as how singular it is. Like, it is so unified, and how it is being presented, and just how unique and how different it is. When you think of King Crimson, you're usually thinking of, 21st Century Schizoid Man. You're thinking of the Lark's Tongue and Aspect, and they would go on to do the trilogy of Lark's Tongue and Aspect, Starless and Bible Black, and Red after this album. So this was kind of like an island into itself, and being its, kind of its own little thing. I really, really appreciate that it's so different than what you conceive of. It took a lot of the more somber moments that you would have from In the Court of the Crimson King, from Epitaph and Moonchild, and really distill it into its essences. While still having extremely bombastic and very pronounced moments on here as well. I mean, the album opens up with the 1-2 punch of the Formentera Lady and the Sailor's Tale. And I love how the Formentera Lady is this 10-minute suite of very impressionistic, very somber, very ethereal music that once we get into the Sailor's Tale, we have this build-up and build-up of build-up and tension and more tension and more tension until the final release of music that's found within it. The whole thing is essentially a musical odyssey found within about 17 minutes worth of this jam session. And I love both the swaying, somber, soothing waves of the first half of the track, as well as the incredibly bombastic and almost migraine-inducing, especially within the saxophone of the Sailor's Tale aspect of that, where it's just so singular. But once the mellotron kicks in within the second half of the Sailor's Tale, man, it hits you with one hell of a punch. Friggin' love that. And then, for those of you that don't want to stick around for the 17-minute odyssey that was, the whole track is really distilled into the third track of the Letters, where it's very somber, very quiet, but then you have this really meaty like combination of Fripp's guitar work with the saxophone, this burn out, burn out, burn out, burn out, that really grips, and it just makes you want to like grab on. The tension is so very real and so very like astute in that sense. Now, even with this, we still have Ladies of the Road, which I really like. It's kind of calling back to like Cat Food or some more of the poignant eras within Lizard. It's more of like a single on the track. It's the most traditional song that you have on here. And it really does start off the second side very well. And it's kind of like this whole, like, moving around on all these literal islands, you know, kind of drifting off into space. And then once we leave that and we go on to Prelude, the Song of the Gills, we're really left to the stars. You know, we're left to this sea and this massive starlight, like, evening above us as we get into the title track of Islands. And the title track is just so beautiful and haunting, and it's so somber and chill. Like Prelude, Song of the Gills really is this string work with this full orchestra, and you can really tell that they are doing something, again, completely different than they did with their previous 3 albums. They're incorporating this whole string section, this whole orchestra that breathes a whole new life into this. It's not just a gimmick, you know. They literally wrote this suite specifically for these instruments to be played that then go right into Islands itself, and it is so intimate. Sinfield's lyrics as well as Boz's vocals work on here, and Boz is just such a beautiful, beautiful like singer on here. He gets so down to the bare essence of this, and that is kind of the word of the day on this album. You know, it's the bare essence, it's the essence, it's the stillness of what's to be found on here, especially when we get into Islands itself. It really does feel like you're just like washing away on the tides and just letting the music kind of envelop itself, and you're seeing the constellations slowly turn themselves into objects as you are watching this cosmic display. I get moved every time this album ends, as we have this very gradual build as the orchestra helps fill out Boz's lyrics, or I guess Sinfield's lyrics through Boz's vocal works. You know, Robert Fripp really has a minimal thumbprint on this in terms of his guitar work, but when it's there, it shines very, very bright. And by the end of this track, I am like in shambles. I am in tears because of how beautiful the music is. So yeah, by the end of this album, I am completely moved away. And it really did something that 1970s progressive rock really wasn't doing, which was providing an extremely intimate touch. You know, as bands were getting bigger and bigger and bigger for their sounds, King Crimson decided to go much smaller and much quieter. And I applaud them. I really, really do. So yeah, I mean, what else is there to say about this album? I freaking love it. It is one of my all-time favorite King Crimson albums. I mean, if push came to shove, this is probably my second favorite album, just before In the Court of the Crimson King, but just after Red. You know, and I know a lot of people don't put this one as highly as I do, but man, this album just gets me. You know, this album just gets me. So yeah, if you haven't heard it in a while, or you haven't heard it at all, maybe give it a spin. You know, this is a perfect evening album where you just, you know, as the lights are starting to get a little bit dimmer, as the sun is set and the stars are starting to come out, this really is the perfect soundtrack for that. So yeah, that's King Crimson's Islands. One of my favorites. A+, you know, 10 out of 10. This is a full-on masterpiece. King Crimson knocks it out of the park again and again and again. And that's about it. That's all I've got for Islands. So what did you guys think about this album? How much do you love it? I'm sure, like, I would be, you know, hard-pressed to see if people love it as much as I do. But if you do, please let me know of your own encounters and experiences with this album. If you loved it, or if you don't like it quite as much as everybody else, let me know whatever you thought about this album by commenting down below. And that's what I've got. So we're going to see how long I can keep up these classic albums for. And if there's a classic album that you want me to cover, please let me know by commenting down below. I'm only going to be covering albums that I already am very familiar with. So I'm not going to be, going out and re-listening to any album that I haven't heard. Oh, I guess I can't re-listen to an album that I haven't heard. But I'm not going to be, listening to an album that I haven't heard in preparation for this. I'm just going to be covering albums that I'm already very, very familiar with. So that's why the first one was Islands, because I've listened to this thousands of times by now. So there you go. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.